What is going on to all my Stranger Things fans out there, and welcome back to my channel, Movie Files. Elliot back again, and as you can see from the title of this video, this is a full spoiler review, breakdown, and recap of the first 7 episodes, Volume 1 of Stranger Things Season 4. I am so excited to be here with you all, because we're going to be breaking it down. I'm going to be highlighting my favorite moments that didn't work for me. I'm going to be giving out some awards, some MVPs, Coach of the Years. This is going to be a fun video, and I'm so excited to be breaking it down for you all. But before we get into the discussion, make sure you're checking me out on all my other social media accounts. If you all are new to the channel and love early movie reviews, TV breakdowns, and live streams, well, come and join the community by subscribing and hitting that notification bell. And if you all enjoyed this spoiler discussion, make sure you're liking this review as well as sharing it. But more importantly, sharing your spoiler. We're talking all spoilers of this new part, so go ahead and spoil it all in the comments, and let's break it down. Share with me in the comments who was your favorite character, what was your favorite episode, your favorite moment in this episode, most shocking moment, and then let's transition to some things that didn't work. What was some subplots or main plots or characters that didn't work for you all? And of course, your thoughts and theories of what you hope to see in the final 2 20-hour plus episodes of this season 4. Let's have those discussions in the comments below. So for those that don't know, I did do a separate spoiler episode 1, chapter 1 breakdown that's on the channel now. So if you want to get my more kind of in-depth episode breakdown of the premiere episode, which I really enjoyed, you can check that video out. But this video, again, this is a full breakdown of the entire season. What worked, what didn't work, surprises, theories. We're breaking it all down. I got my notes ready here, so I'm really excited to break down this video. So I will be leaving, with that being said, because I do have a lot of topics I want to cover, there will be time codes in the description of this video to kind of know what topics I'll be tackling. So if you want to know my thoughts on that character, this plot, what didn't work, what did work, theories, all that stuff will be in the description of this video. With all that being said, full spoilers ahead. So again, let's recap the main plots, the subplots, and then we'll dive deeper into what really worked, what didn't work in those plots. So let's start off with, let's talk about what's going on outside of Hawkins, and that involves Joyce and Murray and the whole Hopper saving him from Russia plot line, and then that includes the Mike getting involved. He's on spring break, and he's trying to help, obviously, find Elle with the help of Will and Jonathan, and I believe his name was Argyle. They're trying to do that, and at the same time, what's going on with Eleven, she's trying to rediscover her powers and going through her trauma and going through her past to rediscover that. So that's one plot there outside of Hopkins. And of course, I kind of mentioned another little plot that's outside of Hopkins is obviously what's going on with Hop and him being in Russia and him saying that he is the cure, and he's kind of he's lost his hope is really what's going on with Hop, and we'll get into my thoughts on that aspect. But I think the stuff that was really scary, terrifying, awesome, amazing, some frustrating things, but the Hawkins plot was so good, and they have a serial killer on their hands in the name of Vecna, and we'll be talking about him. So, and that kind of involves, when we're in Hawkins, we have our crew of Dustin and Lucas and Max and them kind of growing apart, which we'll talk about. While that's going on, we have Steve and Robin, who I love so much. They're trying to find themselves and trying to find love. And then meanwhile, we have Nancy Drew trying to uncover this serial killer, because we have a killer on the loose. She's trying to figure out who killed Christy, who killed her friend Fred. And while all that's going on, we have Eddie, who is just if you saw my review of episode 1, that character to me is something else. And we'll talk about Eddie a lot in this breakdown, but he is the #1 suspect, and he's being, framed or claimed to be the murderer of what happened to Christy, and he's trying to clear his name. So that's kind of our main plots, are as they've been doing since season 1. For the most part, all of our crew is split up, and we have all these main plots, subplots, plot A, plot B, plot C. It's a lot going on. This was easily the biggest season. This had, like, I think each episode was like either, what was it, $10 million or $30 million? Somewhere in that range. This was like high quality production. And let's just start off with that. The production this season was absolutely immaculate. This was the most beautiful season from not only a narrative standpoint, which we'll talk about, but just visually speaking, the spectacle of this season was absolutely incredible. And if you all know me, and if you've been a part of this community for a while, horror is my thing. Horror and sci-fi is my 2 favorite genres, and we got some sci-fi, obviously, with Stranger Things, but the horror elements in this season, oh my goodness. Vecna and the body horror and the cracking and the eyes missing, and then the Demogorgon eating the faces in Russia. This is a very special season, and we're going to get into my overall thoughts, but let's go ahead and kind of break down these storylines. Again, I believe the storylines had incredible moments, incredible elements, but at the same time, there were some plots, some subplots that I thought were frustrating, so it's time to discuss those moments. Let's get into it here. Let's start off by talking about the outside of Hawkins stuff. Again, recapping, breaking down the Elle story, regaining her powers through her past, and how that involves the subplot with Mike, Will, Jonathan, and their friend Argyle, who are looking for Elle and trying to help her throughout the situation. So let's start off with, let's get the negative out of the way, right? And I think I want to start off by saying, for me, Will and Mike, and Jonathan in that matter, are the least interesting characters of this first 7 episodes. That might just be me, but I think that they are just so incredibly uninteresting, in my opinion. And kind of diving deeper to it, I feel like as we went on from these 4 seasons, Mike has become less of an interesting character and has been kind of relegated to just being Elle's boyfriend, and he really has nothing else to offer in the narrative, in my personal opinion. And I think it's kind of frustrating because he was one of my favorite characters in that first season. And I thought that Finn Wolfhard, as we went on, his performance has gotten stale and has gotten a little bit kind of, like I said, uninteresting, and just, for lack of a better word, just kind of flat and boring, if I'm being honest. And connecting that into the whole Will storyline. Now, I said it in my episode 1 breakdown of the season, I don't know if they know what they're doing with Will. Now, I hope there's some type of plot that they're going to give him, but right now, him being, I think he's clearly in love with Mike, and they alluded to it. I want to say it was in season 3 when Mike was hanging out with Elle a lot, and he says, it's not my fault that you don't like girls, which I think they were alluding to that, Will might be gay. And I think they even pushed that envelope a little bit further, and particularly him being in love with Mike. And it's just like, I don't know where they're going with that, because they really didn't give us a resolution for that plot at all. And it's just frustrating, because to me, Will had a very great arc in season 1 and also in season 2, and the whole him being, controlled and being the vessel. But since then, he has just been like in the background and just hanging around, and really nothing to do with that character. So overall, for me, Mike and Will's performance are extremely underwhelming, which, speaking of underwhelming, Jonathan, I mean, he's almost in the same vein, in my opinion, as Mike, where he's just relegated to just being Nancy's boyfriend. And speaking of Nancy and Jonathan, why? Where is this whole, they're like off, they're not on the same page, and now she's might be interested in Steve, and he's just kind of not, he's not going to college and smoking weed. It's just like, what? I don't think they know what they're doing with Jonathan at this point. And this, again, this whole unknown tension between him and Nancy, they referenced it a lot in this season, but they never really explain, other than me just being, a human being and growing up, during this, being a teenager, and you think you found the one you're in love with, but as you grow older, you might discover other things and you might find other interests. Nancy might be back in love with Steve. We'll see what that goes. But they really didn't explore, why is there tension between them, other than it just being a plot and just being like just forced into the narrative. So I thought Jonathan was very underwhelming. And then his friend Argo, if I'm saying his name wrong, correct me in the comments, but I've seen that actor before. He plays a stoner in everything he's in. Like, I think he was in Booksmart. He plays the same character. He was okay. I mean, he was fine, but nothing really too spectacular. But I will say another thing that frustrated me, and I'm getting all the negatives out of this plot, because I do have a lot of positive things to say about Elle, but the plot in which we see Mike and Jonathan and their friend, and obviously Will, they're trying to hack the number. The guy, I will say, highlighting a positive in their plot, when the soldiers came and were shooting up the house, that was tense. I was like, oh my goodness. And the way they shot that was like very Rambo style. The camera was shaking. It was very intense. That was a positive of that darkness there, of that lame plot. But when they have to go to Utah to find Susie, who, never ending story, that was a funny plot, whatever, it's Dusty Boo or whatever she calls him. But when they go to her house, and the whole cheaper by the dozen, the kids running the house, the dad, I don't know where the mom is, and that whole thing was just like so silly to me. And tonally speaking, I know that this show still tried to reach the demographic of younger audiences, but when you got people's bones cracking and eyes popping and heads being ripped off, I think the whole kitty funny storylines need to be eliminated. Now, there wasn't a lot of that in this season. I will give the Duffer Brothers that, but when we transition over to that, again, cheaper by the dozen, goofiness stuff, that to me kind of threw me out and really solidified that whole subplot of Mike, Will, Jonathan was just the least interesting element of this season. But I got all my my bad negative stuff to say about that. But now it's time to move to the positive stuff, and that is, it was a slow burn, but it had a great payoff. I'm talking about Elle and her story, being bullied as a child and then being bullied again as a teenager. And while we were under the impression that she killed those kids, which that scene, that opening 8 minutes of episode 8, was horrific to see. And especially, you know, as I'm recording this, you know, thoughts and prayers go out to the families of the Texas shootings. But just seeing those kids, and we're under the illusion like maybe she is the monster she's been fearing. And we'll get into her plot that it wasn't her. But that moment, she didn't kill those kids. She didn't stand up for herself. And then we see her fast forward as a teen when she hit Angela in the face. And I was jokingly saying in my review, like, Angela deserved that, but you don't condone violence. But I'm like, that was her standing up for herself, right? Being bullied as a kid. So I really love that narrative and the whole idea of her facing her trauma, going back to her past while being deceived by Peter, who we'll talk about who he ended up being a little bit later. But again, it was a slow burn. Whenever we were cutting back to Brenner being in the mix and Owen selling her off, and I do think Owen does still have good intentions because I think they do need her to stop Victor. So I think all that stuff, Brenner to me right now is definitely being framed as like an anti-hero-ish type of character. Like he has done evil things, but there's like a sick, sadistic purpose to what he's doing. So I think there is some gray area there within that character. But all the stuff to me works so perfectly in leading up to her regaining her powers and going through her memories to do so. And also the relationship with Brenner, how that's going to connect to Hopper. I think that's fantastic. And I think seeing her battling her bullies, seeing her battling Peter, and the whole power standoff moment, that stuff was absolutely incredible. And again, I think out of, you know, I mentioned how Mike and Will have kind of digressed. Their characters have kind of been on the back burner and their performance is a little bit stale. I thought Millie Bobby Brown, you know, all pun intended, she's pushing her character. She's really pushing her performance. And to me, she was absolutely incredible. So let me know what you all thought of that. And I'm kind of wrapping up. Overall, I thought the Elle stuff was fantastic. The subplot with Jonathan and Mike and everything with Will was kind of mediocre to say the least. Let me know what you all thought of that. Favorite moments, least favorite moments, and let's have those discussions in the comments. So that's one chunk. Let's transition and discuss the Hopper mission. Now, again, let's get the negatives out of the way. I will say, I am a Joyce fan. I think Murray's okay. He's funny at times, whatever. Joyce frustrated the hell out of me because it's just like, these aren't normal circumstances, Joyce. I understand that you want to save Hopper, but you should have told your kids what you're doing. Again, these aren't normal kids. They have faced Demogorgons. They have faced the Mind Flayer. They're dealing with so much more supernatural stuff that is unexplained that she should be explaining what she's doing. I found the whole plot of her not telling the truth to be very frustrating, in my personal opinion. But again, I'm a fan of Joyce. But going into, especially again, their past experience, it just made no sense to me that she would lie to them. But going into Murray and her getting the doll, finding out it's Enzo, which for my Game of Thrones fans out there, you all recognize that face, and you know what I mean when I'm talking about the man of many faces. I love his character and his ties to Hop, who we'll talk about here in a second. But that plot to me, them meeting Yuri, I think it was his name, it was just too over the top. It was just too goofy. Again, it was very similar in the vein of like the Susie detour, where it was just like, hey, the goofy kind of funny Karate Kid reference of him being the expert in a black belt. That stuff to me, again, it wasn't terrible, but it just wasn't as engaging as what we actually get with the positive here, and that is actually going into Hopper's story and how Hop is rediscovering the fight in him. And I thought that the connection, and again, there's so many connective tissues, I thought the connection of Elle fighting for her powers. I thought Max, who we'll talk about later, fighting for her and living, having something to live for, and how that connects to Hopper, who was hopeless, right? He was just like, you know what? He tried to do the Great Escape, and didn't work out, and he was just defeated, about to be fed off to the Demogorgon, and he was broken, right? But then tying that into, and again, I was at points a little bit annoyed whenever we would cut to Russia, because again, it involved Joyce and the whole goofiness, Yuri storyline and the betrayal and all that stuff. But once they gave us, sat down, slowed down, dove deep into Hopper and him talking about his Sarah and how that connected to his past, there's a lot of themes of facing your past, facing your demons, facing your guilt. There's a lot. This is a great season. Again, I'm starting off with the negatives, but really highlighting what was so great about this season. when we see Hop talk about Sarah, when he was younger, he fought in the war and the whole being exposed to chemicals. And he knew, based on his friends that came back from the war, stillborns, miscarriages, he's like, I don't want to put myself through that. Falls in love, has a kid, didn't tell his wife that it's a 50-50 chance that if we have a child, something can be wrong with the child. And unfortunately, it was kind of reminding me, I'm kind of veering off here, just reminded me a little bit of Amy Adams and Denis Villeneuve's Arrival, where she knew, and I don't want to spoil the film for those that haven't seen it, it's highly recommended. But if you've seen Arrival, you kind of know what I'm referring to, and comparing Amy Adams' character to Hopper, knowing the circumstances, but still kind of going through the motions of a sense, and how he lost Sarah, that to me was great. And then tying that into him fighting, and getting the alcohol and getting the fire, fighting the Demogorgon, all that stuff to me was such a great payoff. And that's where I really want to circle the highlight within that Russia plot. All that stuff was fantastic. Even with the goofiness of Joyce and her frustrating decision to lie to the kids, and Murray karate chopping, fighting stuff, that stuff to me, the positive outweighs the negatives in that plot. But now it is time to discuss and just compare and talk about the best element of this new season, and that is the Hawkins storyline. Now, I want to first start this discussion off with, I want to give some awards out to my basketball fans. We got the NBA Finals coming this Thursday. I'm going to give you all my all-star team, and I want you to share your all-star team of this season. But if you're a basketball fan, basketball is 5 people on the court. My 5 all-stars, in no particular order, is Max, Steve, Erica. Rookie of the Year is my boy Eddie, and led by the coach, who is Nancy, and Dustin too is a part of that starting 5, and they're coached by Nancy, who I'm giving the Coach of the Year to because she was the leader. And then the 6-man award is going to my boy Lucas. So that's my all-star team, and my head coach, Rookie of the Year. Give me yours in the comments below. And this all-star team is going against Vecna, the big bad, who was absolutely terrifying in this season. So let's get into, now there isn't as many negatives for me in Hawkins. Like, this storyline was the best to me in my opinion, but there were some things that were a little bit lacking at points. I'm referring to the basketball team and Jason, who, by the way, that kid Jason, how many speeches did that kid have? I mean, he was like a deacon. He was preaching to the choir this whole season and rallying people up. I will say that got a little bit frustrating, him following people around and the reason it got me frustrated, and if you all have seen Halloween Kills, the whole evil dies tonight, and how he was able, like, the whole plot of the town now being like, all right, let's find these kids and let's find this murderer. It kind of had some similarities to me, which, by the way, the fact that the town couldn't find the kids, it seemed a little plot hole to me, in my opinion. But that stuff was a little bit lacking. But again, it wasn't as frustrating as some of the other stuff I mentioned earlier. But I did think it was funny. And let me know from our horror fans out there, I thought it was so funny that our crew was being chased by a character named Jason, aka Jason Voorhees. And then they're looking for a serial killer who has a lot of similarities to Freddy Krueger. So I thought it was kind of cool. And this show, by the way, has a lot of like Easter eggs and references to iconic, serial killers, whether it be Michael Myers, Will Byers, and all of them having Byers' name. Nancy, obviously for Freddy Krueger fans, Nancy is the main final girl in that series. So I love all the little Easter eggs in the names they give characters. But either way, it's time to really highlight what made this season special to me, and that is the uncovering of Vecna's backstory and crossing that with how Elle discovers who Peter really is. Oh my goodness, and connecting that to the finale, which I thought was absolutely incredible. Like, this has to be one of the best finales of the entire series. But diving deeper into Hawkins' plot, I love the team up between Nancy and Robin as when they visited Victor, who, shout out to Robert Englund, again, a lot of Freddy Krueger references in the whole murders and him murdering his family, or thinking that he was the murderer. That stuff was great, especially, again, I'm a huge Freddy fan, so seeing Robert Englund and that stuff was just fantastic. But just seeing Nancy taking charge, and Robin, I love her so much. I'm a big fan of Maya Hawke. I thought they had great chemistry. And speaking of great chemistry, I mean, we can't deny it at this point. Steve and Dustin, they are just so great together, and them just being so incredible. And listen, I know I'm not the only one watching, or who was watching this, and let me know at home. I thought Steve was dead, and I still think that that's what they're keeping in their back pocket for the end of this show, or I should say not season 5, which is the finale, but I think by the end of season 4, It hurts me to say this, but I think Steve's a goner. But I definitely thought he was a goner in the finale when those bat-like creatures were eating at his stomach. I think that's going to come back and end up killing him. But I thought Steve was a goner. But Steve, straight up, you're an awesome character. Steve was so great. But speaking of awesome characters, I consider a very great new character. I mentioned as a Rookie of the Year, Eddie. To me, even though I was so pissed, they sidelined Eddie for like 2 to 3 episodes. He was like literally not in any scenes for like 2 episodes straight. Eddie was great. Let me know how you all felt about Eddie. That kid was awesome. I really loved him. But more of lines of who I think actually stole this season and I think was a legit scene stealer, Max. Max was so incredible and how they tied into all that stuff into, I don't know which episode is better. Let me know in the comments which is your favorite episode, but I'm tossed between the finale being my favorite episode or her kind of solo-ish episode, which was episode 4, which was titled Dear Billy. That was the only episode in which I literally got emotional. Like, I couldn't help but to tear up when we see her in his mind or in the Upside Down, in his part of the Upside Down, and she was running towards the light with the music reference, which I love that the way they cut the song, the slow motion, and they didn't know she made it, but she ultimately did. The moment that broke me is when she told Lucas. Lucas says, I got you. I thought you were gone. She says, I'm still here, which goes back to me tying it to her Hopper story with fighting for his life, Elle fighting for her powers. It was so powerful in that moment. And Max, Sadie, she killed it. She absolutely killed it. That was my favorite moment of this show. And I think, I'm just going to say, that's my favorite episode. Episode 4, Dear Billy, is my favorite episode of this new season. It might be one of my favorite episodes of the entire series. But wrapping it all up, tying this into the finale episode where we get Nancy. At the same time, we see that Elle discovers who Peter really is and his intentions, which that actor was fantastic. He was so menacing. So he was like an angel, right? He was like a devil in disguise. He was so nice and sweet and giving her little tips on how to do the courses that Brenner was giving him in. I thought in the switch when he had the blood on his face and his eyes, they made that villain, that switch, that Peter reveal was so great to me because I kind of saw it come because I'm like, wait a minute, he didn't die when he was a kid. Where is Peter, young Peter? And we discover, which I'm still kind of confused on where he got his powers from. Like, obviously, Elle and they were born to have powers, right? We know that with her mom and giving them the drugs and all this stuff. But where does his power stem from? Is it just saying that they're X-Men in this world and he's literally came from this? Like, he created, like, he's almost like a, from an X-Men fans, he's like Legion. He's like so, it's just so incredible how I hope they explore that, like where his powers actually stem from. But learning that he's the big bad. He didn't create the Upside Down. It's like a mixture of hell and another dimension, but we see him forming into Vecna when he's going through the tunnel. That's how we end the season. But he created the Mind Flare, right? The whole design of the Mind Flare is the spider, and we know he has an infatuation with Black Widow, so we know that he created that, and he's been there the whole time, hence why when they went into the Upside Down, we were stuck in 1983. It doesn't change in the time, which is, again, I'm a sci-fi fan. I love time travel, multiverses, and all that stuff. So that stuff to me was just so great. And the finale, man, when we build up to Elle versus Peter, and the Peter is Vecna, that stuff was all so fantastic, leaving me on the edge of my seat with what's going to go on with Steve. And then that ties into the big moment, which is Nancy's guilt, which, by the way, I think that this might be an Easter egg, and I might be wrong in saying and kind of referencing this point. This might be a bit of a stretch. When Nancy and Robin went to go visit Victor, and when they were talking to the doctor who's the head of the ward, when they said they wanted to talk to Victor alone, I'm going to have to go back and verify this, but his voice altered. He was like, alone. Like, it almost sounded like it was Vecna that was in like inside of him. And I think, and this is where my Nancy theory kind of comes in, I think that was the Easter egg alluding to Nancy was on his radar. Like, that was planted in that episode 4, I want to say, that's when Vecna was doing his mind search and finding his next victim. And I think that was the moment where Nancy's dreams and like reality was starting to come into place. I might be wrong there, but I might be onto something. But neither here nor there, we see that her guilt and then, justice for Barb comes into fruition because she's now in the pool. The blood's coming in. Again, the horror in this season was so great. So much blood. The blood comes in the pool. She has the reveal, and we're left on the note where, again, we see him becoming Vecna. So What's going to happen to Nancy? Well, we only have a couple weeks to find out. But let's wrap up this discussion video with my final thoughts and my kind of last theories here. I believe Nancy will be saved, but I think at the expense of losing a character by the name of Steve. I think, as Eddie pointed out, that she, without hesitation, she went into the water gate, as Dustin calls it, and saves her. I think Steve is going to do a similar thing and just jump right in front of like a final blow or something. I think Steve's going to sacrifice his life to save Nancy. So I think that might be something that will happen in the last episode. I do believe, as we know, she has her powers, and I think they're going to be better than ever. But I think, we're going to get that round 2 of her and Vecna, but I think she's going to have help from both of her papas. I think Brenner and Hop will be pushing her to ultimately take him out. And then I just really do hope Will and Mike, they figure something out. And Jonathan too, and Joyce, give those characters more to do in the last 2 episodes, especially in the final season of the show, in season 5, which I think is slated for next year. Overall, as you all can see, there's a lot of greatness. There is the Mac stuff, the Hop stuff, the L stuff, was the Vecna stuff, the Nancy, the Dustins, the Ericas, the Eddies of the world. This, to me, at points, was better than season 1. I'm not going to lie. This might be hyperbole, but I think at points in this season, it was on par to being better than season 1. But then, unfortunately, the Joyce, the Wills, the Mikes, the Susie, goofiness, over-the-topness, underacting, underperforming kind of brings it down a notch, but only a notch. So I still have season 1 as my favorite, followed by season 4. I rewatched the whole series leading up to this. I actually thought that season 3 was better than season 2, but this might be a hot take. I think season 2, after rewatching it, is better than season 3 in my personal opinion. So again, just recapping, season 1, season 4 is not too far from it. Season 2, and then season 3. I know a lot of people love season 3, and I loved it when I first saw it. But when I revisited season 3, I'm like, it's not that great. But neither here nor there. That's all my thoughts, guys. Again, thank you for watching this review. I really enjoyed this discussion. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, before you all leave, make sure to like, share your thoughts in the comments from your pros, your cons, favorite characters, favorite moments, least favorite moments, thoughts, theories, and everything in between in the comments below. Of course, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and hit that notification bell. That way you don't miss any of my future reviews. I'm going to probably release this on Memorial Day, so happy Memorial Day to you all. Again, hope you're staying safe. Hope you have a fantastic day. Before you all leave, make sure you subscribe. Check out my previous Stranger Things reviews. Check out my most recent review, and we'll catch you all on the next breakdown.